No one talked about the fire that took down the lakehouse. They just replaced the yearly family getaway with a bland dinner at Aunt Delia's suburban dining room, everybody bringing a dish, acting like nothing had happened. That was the Hartman family's specialty. Swallowing the inconvenient and choking on the truth. Harper Hartman sat stiff at the end of the table, her homemade lasagna untouched. The scraping of forks against porcelain filled the gaps where conversation should have been. Her father, George, raised a glass to healing like the lake house hadn't burned to ash just 4 months ago, and taken half of her mother's keepsakes with it. Harper had spent 3 summers in that house restoring it with her mom. Her sister, Camilla, had spent 3 weekends at most, and still managed to post a teary tribute on Instagram like she'd lost a limb. That was Camilla's talent, performing grief without carrying its weight. Harper scanned the table. Her father, her stepmother Lila, who had married him just 2 years after her mother passed. Camilla, glowing in designer beige. And their younger brother Miles, who just looked tired. He always did when he came back from school. Then the wine glass shattered. Harper hadn't realized she was gripping it so hard. "I'm fine," she said flatly as everyone froze. "Just slippery." Aunt Delia swept in with paper towels, chirping something about clumsy hands and strong wrists. Camilla gave a concerned tilt of her head, but didn't move. No one noticed how Harper's hands were trembling, not from pain, but from the envelope burning in her coat pocket. She hadn't meant to open her mother's lockbox. But after the fire, she'd driven back alone and found it, charred at the edges but still shut tight. And inside, among the water-damaged photos and tarnished jewelry, was a will, a second will, one signed and notarized 6 months before her mother's passing. It left the lake house solely to Harper. Not to the children, not to George, just Harper. She had taken it to a lawyer, it was valid. But when the insurance payout came in, it went straight to her father. When she asked why, he mumbled something about joint ownership and Camilla needing help with her mortgage. And now Camilla had a new car. Lila had a remodeled kitchen. Harper had a burned-down house, a forgotten lasagna, and a truth sitting like a brick in her gut. After dinner, Harper stepped outside into the chill. She needed air. The porch was quiet, the type of cold that made your breath visible, but your rage clearer. Camilla followed her. "Are you okay?" Her voice had that silky, practiced empathy. "You seemed tense in there." Harper stared at her, studying her sister's face. Perfect, unbothered, expensive. "How's the new Audi?" Harper asked. Camilla blinked. "Excuse me?" "You know, the one you bought a month after the insurance check cleared." Camilla's eyes hardened for a split second, then softened again like butter under a broiler. "I don't know what you mean." Harper pulled out her phone, opened the scanned document, held it up. "I found Mom's real will." Camilla's face drained of all color. "Harper, it left the lake house to me, just me." Camilla didn't speak. "You posted a tribute to that place. A 3-paragraph sob story with a black and white filter and a crying emoji. But you never loved that house. You loved what it bought you." "I didn't know," Camilla whispered. "Dad said, he said there was no other will." Harper watched her closely. If Camilla was lying, she was good at it. "I'm going to reclaim the payout," Harper said. "I'm going to take back what Mom left me." "You can't just undo everything." "Oh," Harper said calmly, "I'm not undoing. I'm rewriting." Inside, her father laughed at something Lila said. The sound made Harper nauseous. She had always wondered why her mother had rewritten the will, but never told her. Now she thought maybe her mother had known. Known how George operated. Known what Camilla would become when no one was watching. And known that Harper, quiet, careful Harper, would be the one to find it. She wasn't going to scream or beg. She had a better idea. Because sometimes justice didn't arrive with a bang. Sometimes it showed up with bank statements, notarized files, and a softly spoken no. The first time Harper stepped into the lawyer's office, she hadn't been sure what she was looking for. Closure, maybe. Or just someone official to confirm that she wasn't going crazy. Now she was back, with a folder in her hand and something sharper than hope twisting in her chest. Her lawyer, Tessa North, was a sharp-eyed woman with silver-streaked hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun. She didn't bother with small talk. Harper liked that about her. "Your mother's will is binding," Tessa said, flipping through papers with clean efficiency. "She clearly amended it. Properly witnessed, properly signed. Your claim to the lake house and the policy payout is real. The only issue is proving the insurance went to the wrong person." "Can we?" Harper asked, voice tighter than she expected. Tessa looked up. "We can. It'll take pressure, letters, possibly court, but we can." A small flame flickered in Harper's chest. It wasn't happiness, it wasn't relief, it was power. The first whiff of it she'd felt since her mother died and her family turned polite and hollow. "Start whatever you need to," Harper said. That night, Harper stood in front of her bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection. Not in self-admiration or self-doubt, just studying herself. The quiet daughter, the one who didn't need help, the one they assumed would stay silent. She remembered something her mom once said during a summer thunderstorm at the lake house. "Being quiet doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're saving your voice for when it matters." Harper picked up her phone, opened the group chat named Hartman Kids, mostly dead now except for Camilla's occasional updates and Miles's apologies for missing holidays. She typed, "Just a heads up, Mom's revised will left the lake house to me alone. The insurance payout should have come to me. I've initiated legal proceedings to correct this. If you have questions, direct them to my attorney." Then she hit send. 5 minutes later, Camilla called. Harper let it ring. The next morning, she went to work at the local museum, where she cataloged exhibits and taught kids about ancient coins. No one there knew about the Hartman fire or the family fallout, and she preferred it that way. But her peace shattered during her lunch break when she saw it. Camilla's newest Instagram story. A photo of the lake house, old, pre-fire, with a caption, "Can't believe some people care more about money than memories. Some things should stay in the family." Harper almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she replied publicly, "Agreed, like following our mother's will." Her phone blew up within 10 minutes. Later that week, Miles called. He never called. "I just got off work," he said. "Are you okay?" Harper hesitated. Define okay. "I don't know what Dad told Camilla, but I didn't know about the second will, I swear." "I believe you," Harper said quietly. He paused. "Camilla's freaking out. Lila's been calling lawyers. Dad keeps saying you're stirring up trouble." Harper stood at her kitchen window, watching the wind bend the trees. "I'm not stirring up trouble. I'm just undoing a theft." There was silence on the other end. Then Miles said, "Let me know if you need anything." Harper almost told him no, almost said she had it handled, but instead she said, "I might." On Sunday she got the call, from her father. "Harper," he began, voice too calm, "we need to talk." She let the silence stretch. "I didn't know about the second will," he added, "but what's done is done. We rebuilt our lives. You don't want to dig up old bitterness." Harper's voice was even. "You cashed in on something that wasn't yours." "It was a family home." "It was my home," she said, "and you gave pieces of it away like it meant nothing." He sighed. "You're being dramatic. This won't bring your mother back." "No," Harper said, "but maybe it'll stop you from burying her wishes." After hanging up, Harper opened the lake house file again. It wasn't just paperwork, it was stories, photos, her mother's annotated sketches for the kitchen she never got to finish. Her handwriting, neat and hopeful. She wasn't fighting for money. She was fighting for truth, for memory, for the right to not be erased. And she wasn't backing down. The next Monday morning, a heavy envelope arrived at Harper's door, hand-delivered, with a gold-embossed seal bearing her father's name at the corner. George W. Hartman and Associates, Estate Planning and Property Law. The irony wasn't lost on her. She didn't open it right away. Instead, she placed it on the kitchen table beside a ceramic mug her mother had hand-painted years ago, now chipped but sacred. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that wraps itself around your spine, and makes you remember things you weren't trying to remember. Her fingers finally peeled the envelope open. Inside, a formal notice drafted by her father's firm, proposing an amicable resolution to avoid family litigation. It suggested Harper accept a one-time payment of $40,000, roughly a quarter of the insurance payout, in exchange for dropping all claims to the lakehouse or its insurance distribution. Harper stared at the page. Then she laughed, a bitter, breathless laugh that sounded foreign in her own throat. That night, Harper met Tessa at her office again. This time, she brought a bottle of wine. They sat across from each other under the dim amber light, the legal documents spread between them like a battlefield blueprint. "He really offered you hush money from your own inheritance," Tessa muttered, scanning the letter. Harper sipped. "He thinks I'll cave." "Will you?" Harper shook her head. "Not for that price, not for any price." Tessa smiled for the first time in their meetings. "Good." Meanwhile, Camilla had taken a new approach. She was launching what Harper now called the PR offensive. First, it was cryptic quotes about loyalty. Then family photo flashbacks. Then a blog post titled, "When Heirlooms Break Hearts," written in her usual breathy influencer tone. "When my childhood home burned down, I didn't just lose walls. I lost the anchor to my identity. Some things, once gone, can't be rebuilt. But even ashes have stories, and I'll keep sharing mine." Harper stared at the screen. The comments were flooding in. Hearts, hug emojis, fake sympathy. It felt like Camilla was painting over the past with pastel lies. So Harper posted a photo. One of her and her mom, paint-streaked faces, hands wrapped around coffee mugs, standing barefoot in the unfinished kitchen of the lakehouse. Her caption was a single sentence. "Some stories weren't meant to be shared. They were meant to be honored." Then she closed her phone. Let Camilla play to strangers. Harper had the truth. 3 days later, Harper received a call from her cousin Drew, Delia's son, a soft-spoken painter who'd stayed out of family drama for years. "Hey," he said, "can I show you something?" Harper met him at a local coffee shop. He looked nervous, the way people do when they're about to betray someone who once trusted them. "I found this at my mom's place," he said, handing over a folder. "She said your dad asked her to get rid of it." Harper opened the folder. Inside was a full copy of the revised will, her mother's, dated, signed, clear. Her breath hitched. "Why didn't she give this to me earlier?" Harper whispered. "She's scared of your dad," Drew said. "Said it'd tear the family up." Harper's jaw clenched. "It's already torn." When she returned home, Harper laid the second copy beside the first one. They matched. No doubt, no question. She opened her email and typed, "Tessa, I have a second copy of the will, originally kept by my Aunt Delia. She was told to destroy it. She didn't. I want to move forward. No settlements, no negotiations. Let's begin." That evening, a knock came at the door. Harper expected a delivery. She got Camilla, hair curled, lips glossy, wearing a trench coat that looked like it cost more than Harper's rent. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. Harper leaned against the frame. "Depends. Are you here as my sister or Dad's messenger?" Camilla's mouth tightened. "Neither. I'm here because I think we need to figure this out. Privately, before you drag us all through court." "There's no us, Camilla. There's you, who benefited, and me, who got erased." Camilla's voice cracked. "You think I wanted this to happen?" Harper crossed her arms. "I think you let it." Silence. Then Camilla whispered, "You're going to burn everything down." Harper's eyes didn't waver. "That house already burned, remember?" She stepped back and closed the door. Camilla stood on the porch for a moment longer, then walked away. Back inside, Harper sat at her mother's old desk, the weight of legacy pressing into her shoulders. She didn't feel like a daughter anymore. She felt like a soldier, and the war was just beginning. The summons was delivered on a Wednesday. Clean ivory paper, perfectly folded, hand-signed by Harper's attorney and sent to George Hartman's legal counsel. The notification was simple. Harper Hartman was pursuing full restitution of the insurance funds and legal recognition of sole ownership over the lake house. Her father's response came just 2 hours later, not to Tessa, but directly to Harper's inbox. The subject line read, "We don't have to do this." She didn't open it. She simply forwarded it to Tessa and deleted it. Because they did have to do this. They had to rip the curtain down. They had to say it out loud. Mom wanted me to have that house. You took it anyway. 3 days later, Harper pulled into the charred remains of the lake house property. It was still there. The scent of scorched wood had faded, replaced by damp earth and silence. The brick chimney stood like a grave marker. The wildflowers she and her mother had planted along the lake's edge had somehow survived. Purple, defiant. Harper stepped out, her boots crunching on broken glass and scattered gravel. She held the second will in her coat pocket, next to a worn photo of her mom sanding the windowsill in a bandana and sunglasses. She wasn't here to mourn. She was here to remember. To remind herself why she was fighting. The lake was still, gray and glassy. The breeze lifted her hair. Somewhere across the water, a loon called out, a lonely, hollow sound that hit her in the ribs. This place had meant something, and they had treated it like a windfall. When she got back into town, her voicemail was full. One from Tessa. "We've got a court date. Pre-trial mediation first. He's resisting, of course, but we've got leverage." 3 from Camilla. "I didn't know he offered Delia money to keep the will quiet. I swear I didn't know. Please don't drag us through this. He's spiraling. Just think before you ruin everything." But the last voicemail wasn't from Camilla. It was from Miles. "Hey, I want you to know I've been thinking about what you said. I asked Dad about the will. He lied straight to my face. I'm not okay with that. I'm with you, Harper. Just tell me what you need." Harper pressed her forehead to the steering wheel, her breath catching. It wasn't relief exactly, but it was something close. Maybe not everyone had turned away. At the mediation meeting 2 weeks later, George walked in with Lila on his arm and a team of suited lawyers behind him. Camilla sat off to the side, legs crossed, sunglasses still on indoors. Harper wore a black sweater and no makeup. Let them look. Let them underestimate her. The mediator, an older woman with warm eyes and a tired voice, greeted everyone, then began. Harper didn't look at her father. She looked at her lawyer. Then she spoke. "Before we talk money," Harper said, "I want to read something." She pulled out her mother's handwritten letter, the one she found tucked behind the will, meant for whoever found it first. "If you're reading this, it means I'm not here anymore, and it means I didn't get to say what I needed to in time. This house was always Harper's heart. She loved every dusty corner of it. I only rewrote the will because I saw the way George looked at the property, like an asset, not a memory. Camilla doesn't need it. She never loved it the way Harper did. I hope this will bring clarity, not conflict." The room was silent. Then George spoke, voice tight and clipped. "That letter isn't legally binding." "No," Harper said calmly, "but it's morally devastating." After the meeting, Camilla followed her outside. "You humiliated him in there," she hissed. "He humiliated himself," Harper shot back. "I gave him a chance to do the right thing. He declined." Camilla looked like she might cry or scream. Instead, she said something Harper didn't expect. "I always thought you were Mom's favorite. Now I know why." Harper blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" "She knew you wouldn't fold. Even when she was dying, she said, 'Harper's the one who remembers things the way they happened.'" For a moment, the air stood still between them. Camilla adjusted her sunglasses, then turned and walked away. Back home, Harper collapsed onto the couch. Her phone buzzed. It was Miles again. "Let me testify." She stared at the screen. "I'll say what I saw, what Dad told me, what Camilla said after the funeral. I'll back you." Harper typed a single word. "Okay." Then she went to her bedroom, pulled out a box of old family photos, and began to lay them across the bed. Not to cry, not to reminisce, but to prepare. Because the trial wasn't just about the lake house. It was about everything they'd taken for granted. And Harper was going to make them remember every last inch of it. The courtroom wasn't as dramatic as TV made it look. No gasps, no thunderous objections, just clean lines, polished wood, and a judge with tired eyes. But for Harper, stepping inside felt like walking into a fire that had been waiting to reignite. Camilla sat with her arms crossed tightly, hair flawless, expression blank. George was unreadable beside his attorney, chin high, face rigid, the kind of man who once lectured Harper about carrying the Hartman name with dignity, now doing everything he could to drag that same name through the mud to protect his secrets. Harper didn't look at them. She looked at Miles, seated behind her, and then at Tessa, who gave her a slight, knowing nod. Let the record begin. The judge, Honorable Miriam LeBlanc, was known for being no-nonsense. She spoke plainly, asked directly, and didn't tolerate pageantry. Harper liked her instantly. Opening statements were made. George's team framed it as a misunderstanding, painting Harper's claim as divisive, emotional. They leaned heavily on the idea of joint assets, verbal agreements, and the presumed unity of the Hartman children. Tessa didn't play defense. She played history. She laid out the timeline, the original will, then the revised one, legally valid. Harper's personal labor and upkeep of the lake house. Her exclusion from financial decisions after her mother's death. The conveniently lost will rediscovered. The hush money offer. The second surviving copy that Delia hid. Then came the letters, handwritten, dated. Harper's mother had not just rewritten a legal document. She'd left behind proof, intimate, human, undeniable, of her intentions. And it was those intentions that Harper was here to restore. When it was Miles's turn to speak, Harper clenched her hands so hard her knuckles burned. He sat quietly, adjusting the mic with shaking fingers. I was 18 when my mom died, he said. I didn't understand what was happening, but I remember the night she told us she had revised her will. I remember my dad brushing it off, saying she wasn't thinking clearly, saying we'd figure it out later. He paused, voice thickening. But we never figured it out. We just let him take control. And now? I know that was wrong. She trusted Harper with that house. We all knew it. We just didn't stop it. Tessa smiled gently. And how did your father explain the insurance payout? Miles swallowed. He said it was too complicated, that it was better this way. But then, a few months later, Camilla bought a new car, and Lila got a new kitchen, and Harper got nothing. Thank you, Tessa said softly. No further questions. George didn't look at his son, not once. Later, Harper took the stand herself. She didn't rehearse. She didn't perform. She just told the truth. She spoke about the summers she spent with her mom at the lake house, about the scraped knuckles from sanding cabinets, the nights they ate cold sandwiches while painting walls, the hours they spent listening to old records on the porch. She spoke about finding the burned lockbox, about sitting on the floor for hours with the smell of ash in her nose, rereading her mother's will until her eyes blurred. I wasn't grieving a house, Harper said. I was grieving a promise, one that my father ignored, one my sister profited from, one I have every right to reclaim. She looked toward George then, just once. I am not doing this out of anger, she said, voice level. I am doing this out of respect, for her, for what she built, and for the version of this family she still believed in when she wrote that will. The room was silent. Even Camilla didn't meet her eyes. After the hearing ended, Tessa and Harper stood in the hallway. Judge will deliberate. Might take a few weeks, Tessa said. Harper nodded. I can wait. You were perfect, Tessa added. The judge saw your heart. I wasn't trying to show her my heart, Harper replied. Just my mother's. That night, Harper returned home to find a letter slid beneath her door. She opened it cautiously. Inside, in Camilla's unmistakable cursive, were 6 words. I'm sorry. He made me choose. There was no signature, no explanation, just silence. The next morning, Harper visited the lake house again. This time, she brought a folding chair, a thermos of coffee, and a small speaker. She sat among the ruins and played Joni Mitchell, her mom's favorite. For the first time in months, she didn't cry. She just listened. To the birds, to the wind, to the quiet hum of justice slowly approaching. It was coming, and this time it would come for all of them. It happened in the quiet. No cameras, no dramatic face-offs, no final gavel strike echoing like thunder. Just Harper, standing alone in the county records office, watching the clerk hand her a stamped deed with her name only etched into the white. Her fingers trembled when she touched it, not out of fear, out of reverence. It was over. What had been stolen was now restored. The money came through a week later, $178,400, every cent accounted for. Harper didn't celebrate, she didn't splurge. She bought paint, she bought lumber, she hired a modest crew. And on the first morning of reconstruction, she drove to the lake house site alone, her mother's playlist humming from the speakers, and stood in the stillness of the ruins. The trees hadn't moved, the lake hadn't forgotten her. She whispered, "We're back," and started again. Camilla never apologized properly. Her messages became less frequent, slowly slipping into silence. Eventually, they stopped altogether. Harper didn't block her. She didn't respond either. One day, a package arrived. No return address. Inside, their mother's gardening gloves. Harper kept them in a shadow box in the new mudroom. She didn't need closure. She'd built her own. George sold the house in the suburbs and moved to Arizona. Miles heard from him occasionally. Harper didn't. She didn't expect to. In the end, Harper didn't win a war. She reclaimed a truth. And that truth didn't just live in a piece of land. It lived in how she chose to rise from what was burned. The new lake house wasn't identical. It was better, more sunlight, a larger window in the kitchen, just the way her mother had dreamed of but never got to see. A fireplace, rebuilt with stones they salvaged from the old foundation. One afternoon, Harper stood barefoot on the porch, watching birds cut through the pink sky. She thought of her mother, of those final days, of the will no one believed in until she gave it a voice. And then she went inside, sat at her mother's desk, and pulled out a blank journal. On the first page, she wrote, "This house was never about the walls. It was about memory, about care, about who shows up when it counts." And below that, she signed her name, Harper Elaine Hartman, owner. In the months that followed, Harper hosted grief workshops in the newly rebuilt guest room. She planted wildflowers. She invited neighbors. She made tea from the herbs her mother used to grow. She became the kind of woman her mother would have admired, steady, kind, relentless in her truth. And the lake, for the first time in years, felt like home again. Not haunted, honored. End of story.